Hi guys, so Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, delivered a speech today on what he sees as Labour's path back to power. It seems almost a lifetime ago when a Labour Prime Minister was in number 10, so whether Starmer can do it, can win power, remains to be seen. I will do a response to his speech at another time, but I wanted to show you this ridiculous interview GB News had. Who better to judge the quality of Starmer's speech than a foaming at the mouth Brexiteer? This guy is an actual MP. Let's hear his thoughts on the speech.
Well, first of all, lovely to speak to you, Darren. And with Captain Hindsight and his little gimmick, let's not forget that this is the guy who wanted a second referendum, who wanted to drag us back into the EU, who...
Okay, just there's a lot to take in just a few seconds there. Captain Hindsight. So Captain Hindsight is when Keir Starmer suggests action, generally when it comes to the pandemic. Boris Johnson says no, yes. This is Captain Hindsight for these people. Actually, he's more like Captain Foresight, because he said, maybe we should have a lockdown, maybe we should have a circuit breaker. And Boris Johnson says, no, I'm not going to do that. And then a few weeks later, Boris Johnson has a lockdown. So once again, he's Captain Foresight, not Captain Hindsight. And then this thing about dragging people into the EU. I thought these people were Democrats. I thought these Brexiteers cared about democracy. They keep banging on about how the vote must be respected. But if the majority tomorrow or next week or the year after decided we would actually like to rejoin the European Union, surely Jonathan here would support a referendum, no? Or is it only he's a Democrat when it's convenient?
Suddenly now found his patriotism, and the fact he even needs to explain he's a patriot, I think is something that he should have a look in the mirror at. You shouldn't have to explain why you believe and love your country. It should just be automatically there.
Does Jonathan love his country? Because I actually think looking after the people of that country is loving the country. But Jonathan here voted consistently against measures to reduce tax avoidance. Why does he want Britain to be poorer? If you were strengthening the laws to avoid tax avoidance, that would help the country. Why does Jonathan hate the country? Why isn't Jonathan a patriot? He also doesn't seem to like Scotland either. Almost always voted against transferring more powers to the Scottish Parliament. Why does he hate Scotland? Generally voted against transferring more powers to the Welsh Parliament. Why does he hate Wales and Scotland? Voted against a more proportional system for electing MPs. Why does he hate the electorate? Who's the Democrat here? Who's the patriot here?
And with regards to Labour, we had 70 years of Labour in Stoke-on-Trent, North, Kidsgrove and Tork. Nothing happened. In fact, the Labour Party have only just found Stoke again after they lost it because Google Maps exists and they can find it by searching it.
He's a comedian. Why is he wasted in the House of Commons? He should be on stage. This is wonderful. Yes.
Whereas it's a Conservative government under Boris Johnson's leadership that's given 56 million for the Levelling Up Fund, 29 million for Transforming Cities Fund, 550 Home Office jobs and a 17.6 million town deal.
This is what they normally do. They roll off these numbers. Yeah, 56 million here, 20 million there, 100 million here, 500 million there. Obviously, this means nothing to ordinary people. Because once the numbers are divided out, it works out at like 50p per person or a pound per person or something like that. It's absolutely useless, absolutely meaningless.
The Kidsgrove, which means the sports centre, closed by Labour because they couldn't be bothered to spend £1 to save it, will now be refurbished and reopened in spring 2022.
Can you imagine if it was the other way around? If the Labour Party had spent money on this, he'd be saying, why are you wasting money on this sports stadium? Why aren't you spending it on something else?
I mean, you say all that, but and it's not surprising that you're attacking Labour. Being in government, of course, they're in opposition. That's what happens in politics. But at the end of the day, Keir Starmer's argument about particularly patriotism is one based on pointing out flaws, that it's entirely, in fact, more than entirely possible. It's the right thing to do, that if you love your country, to point out some of those flaws. That's the role of the opposition.
This guy is actually a good journalist. He's actually pointing out the reality of it, that a true patriot is somebody who points out the flaws and tries to fix them. Well done here.
And in effect, he seems to be doing a better job than your leader at the moment.
I think Captain Hindsight has been on so many different sides of different fences. B&Q must have run out by now with the amount he must be.
Look, maybe I take it back on the comedy. Just stick with being a member of parliament.
Purchasing, because that man's position moves on so many different angles. I mean, you've only got to look at education. He is absolutely, and look, even when we opened up the economy on the 19th of July, 2021, he was asking us to remain locked down. On schools, he remained silent.
How has that been inconsistent? He was asking us to remain. I don't know if that's true, actually, but he was following, who was he listening to? He was listening to the scientists. Boris Johnson was not listening to the scientists, but Boris Johnson said he was listening to the scientists. You can't blame Keir Starmer for listening to the scientists and saying, this is what we should do. Boris Johnson was not doing that. Boris Johnson is the Prime Minister here. Boris Johnson was supposed to be listening to the scientists. The leader of the opposition was. That's a bit of a problem.
Because the Not Education Union have him in the back pocket and he's just following their lead.
The Not Education. The Not Education Union. Or maybe I misheard what he said. Let me just hear that again.
He remains silent because the Not Education Union have him in the back.
The first time I actually heard this video, I didn't pick up on that. The Not Education Union. Once again, this guy is an MP. He's not just some guy down the pub or your neighbor who goes on tirades about, politicians. This guy was elected, and he's using terms like Not Education Union.
Back pocket and he's just following their lead. And then you see many other positions, like I say on Brexit, suddenly he wants to make Brexit work, yet despite the fact he wanted to drag us back into the EU and have a second referendum. So the last person I'm going to take lectures from is Captain Hindsight. And I think that people in Stoke-on-Trent, North Kidsgrove and Talk, yes, they're not overly enamoured by us in some regards at the moment. Being in government during a global pandemic is...
No, we have well, I don't know what type of language you describe this. Yeah, we're not so popular at the moment, but we are, dealing with the worst pandemic in the history of humanity. Give us a bit of a break. Boris Johnson is doing his best.
It's not easy. Trying to deliver on key pledges like levelling up is a challenge, of course it is. But I think that people will see in the years ahead, as this pandemic becomes an endemic, that they will see that we are the party delivering. We're already seeing in Stoke-on-Trent North over...
And then he goes on and talks just continually about how his party is delivering on everything. Instead of actually... He didn't actually present a criticism of the speech. He probably didn't watch the speech. I don't know why he was invited on to talk about the speech when he probably didn't see it. Highly likely he didn't see it. And he didn't actually pretend that he saw it. He didn't say, well, I didn't like this part of it, or this part didn't make sense, or this part of the speech didn't connect with the public because of this reason or that. He just attacked Keir Starmer for being Captain Foresight. He attacked him for supporting a second referendum. Once again, it seems a bit more democratic. And he attacked his patriotism when this guy is against the country having more money to spend on services. And he gave examples of how his government is spending money on services. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.